Cyberpunk 2077 just released their biggest update ever, and in this video, we're going to be taking a look at all the changes that have been introduced in the patch 2.0. Now, if you already have Cyberpunk 2077, this is a free update that is available on PC, Xbox Series X, and PlayStation 5. And in this video, we're going to break down all the different changes that we see in patch 2.0. So, without further ado, let's dive into the patch notes. So the free update 2.0 for Cyberpunk 2077 is now available. It brings an overhaul to a number of gameplay mechanics and core game features, such as the police system and perk trees, along with various fixes and improvements. These changes apply to the base game and are available to all players free of charge. There's more to come on September 26 for owners of Cyberpunk 2077 Phantom Liberty expansion. So let's see these list of changes here, starting off with the police system. This was one of the big problems with Cyberpunk 2077, both at launch and in subsequent updates. The police system's never been very good at this game. It was always easy to evade the police, even if you committed crimes in public. They wouldn't really pursue you for very long. It was very easy to get rid of bounties and that kind of thing. So CDPR has tried to overhaul that and make it so that the police actually will try to take you down when you commit crimes. So the NCPD will chase you when you commit a crime, whether on foot or in a vehicle. The types of units in pursuit and their behavior will depend on your wanted level. So this is going to be kind of like a GTA 5 style wanted system. The NCPD will now be present in the world, actively patrolling the streets of Night City. That's kind of interesting. We have seen police scattered throughout Night City before, but they're usually only available as sort of like scripted events or placed NPCs in the world, so it'll be interesting to see them sort of like spawning randomly in. You can now hear NCPD radio chatter through the radio, and you can actually quick hack NCPD police officers, which is kind of interesting. So that could be kind of cool to take down some of those like Cyberrunner cops who sometimes will drop more like legendary loot. They've also added vehicle combat. Now, we saw a little bit of this from the trailer, and what it kind of looks like it's going to be is basically akin to the quick hacking. Like, you bring up a little quick hack menu and you can, hack an enemy vehicle's brakes or make them like slam through a wall by like hitting the accelerator, those sorts of things. And then you can also fire your gun while in a vehicle. So you kind of like in those scripted events in the game, you would have moments where you would lean out of the vehicle to fire on an enemy. And it looks like now you can do that while you're driving around the city, which is kind of cool. Added the option to engage in combat while driving a vehicle from either first-person or third-person perspective. While driving, you can use pistols, submachine guns, and health items. Some vehicles come equipped with mounted weapons, which that's kind of cool. Melee combat is possible on motorcycles. Interesting. Vehicle tires can now be shot or slashed. Introduce new perks that unlock a variety of vehicle-related abilities, such as quick hacking vehicles, increasing collision damage, boosting vehicle weaponry, allowing the use of the Sandevistan and Koreznikov cyberware, so you can use the Sandy while driving. That's kind of cool. And the ability to exit moving vehicles quickly and stylishly. Combat AI enhancements. We've made numerous improvements to enemy AI, including various enhancements to enemy Netrunner AI, whatever that means. Improved NPC reactions to grenades and their use of grenades. Improved NPC reaction time when flanked. Faster detection by enemies when you're walking or sprinting. Enemies equipped with Sandevistan cyberware will now activate it to counter a player who uses their own. That's interesting. I'd be curious to see how that plays. Enemies that don't hear a silenced weapon but do notice the bullet impact will now properly investigate the source of the gunshot. Made improvements for scenarios where a group of NPCs can join another group in combat against you. This is going to be kind of hard to suss out without actually playing through the game. So what I plan to do over the next couple of days is dive into this patch, get into a few different combat encounters, test out some of the new abilities and whatnot, and kind of see how this plays. It's cool to see that they're trying to make improvements to the AI, but just reading the patch notes, it's hard to see what that's actually going to look like when we play the game. We've also got some big changes to net running. Added perks to expand net running capabilities. For example, a new overclock mode allows you to upload quick hacks by consuming health if you have insufficient RAM. That is interesting. One of the big problems with doing a Netrunner build, especially in the early game, is you can only use like 1 or 2 abilities before you're completely out of RAM. And until you've unlocked the perks, which allow you to increase your amount of RAM or increase your RAM regeneration or make it so that you don't run out of RAM completely, it makes doing a Netrunner build kind of early, hard in the early game until you can kind of like get those perks, get better cyberware so that you have more RAM, or get a better cyber deck so you have more RAM, those sorts of things. Rebalanced RAM costs, rebalanced damage and upload time, change the effects of some quick hacks, remove the option to use breach protocol on enemies. Oh man, okay, so this is something I would do a lot. You could use the breach protocol to hack a group of enemies and then reduce the cost of RAM usage on your abilities, increase damage with massive vulnerability and those sorts of things. So they've actually removed that from the game and totally rebalanced RAM. So I'm going to have to get into one of my many, many Netrunner builds to kind of see how this plays out in combat now. So I'll be testing that out for sure. Some interesting changes here. I really want to dive into the perks and skills, though, because this is where the biggest changes have come in this update. So they've completely overhauled the perks and skills in Cyberpunk 2077 and added a bunch of new abilities that will change the way we engage in combat. I'm going to be honest, the original perk tree was pretty terrible in Cyberpunk. Most of the upgrades were so minuscule. Like you would get something like 3% increased damage with pistols, or a 10% reduction in reload time speed. There were very few things that actually added new gameplay abilities through the perk tree. One of the only ones I can think of off the top of my head is the Hidden Dragon ability, which would allow you to do kind of like a Far Cry style death from above takedown on enemies. So they've completely rebalanced this. They've completely reworked the way they do the perk and skill trees. And now we're going to get some new abilities. So let's take a look at what they talk about here. A complete perk tree overhaul. These trees now contain fewer perks, but impact gameplay in a much more meaningful way. Progressing in a given perk tree will allow you to unlock special abilities, such as overclock mode for Netrunners, bolt shots for tech weapons, the adrenaline rush ability for body-focused character builds, and so on. Because we have introduced extensive changes to the perk system, your spent perk points on existing playthroughs have been refunded. You can also choose to reset your attributes once. That is huge. That was one of the big things that sucked with trying to try out different builds in Cyberpunk, is you would have to permanently commit your attribute point spend. But given that they've made such a massive overhaul to these new abilities, they're giving players the chance to reset their attributes as well. So we're actually going to be able to test out different builds, which I think is phenomenal. Feel free to redistribute these perks and attribute points to suit your preferred playstyle before you continue playing. We merged the previous skills into 5 new ones: Headhunter, Netrunner, Shinobi, Solo, Engineer. These are not restricted by their corresponding attributes level. On existing playthroughs, your progression on old skills has been transferred to their new counterparts. So in the old system, basically, if you went into each attribute tree, you would have different skills. You would have different skills below that. So, for instance, in tech, you would have, I think, crafting. I know in net running, you had like breach protocol, and then, or in intelligence, you had breach protocol and quick hacking, I believe, were the 2 skills. So those were actually now, we're reducing the number of sub-skill categories from 10 to 5 and kind of streamlining those. So that's going to be interesting to kind of see how that looks. Remove the option to reset all perks at once. Instead, it is now possible to refund each perk individually for free. That's a nice quality of life thing. Obviously, if you're deep into a playthrough and the only way to reset your skills is to refund every single perk point and then rebuild them out, that can be really annoying if you really just want to test out one different skill or ability. So that's definitely a good quality of life. They've made some changes to the Cyberware system and added new cyberware to the games. Let's see what changes we've got here. Armor is now provided primarily by Cyberware. As a result, clothing's purpose is mostly cosmetic. Clothing items no longer have mod slots, and only some items provide bonuses. Now, that is very interesting. That was also one of the big problems with the game at launch, was that you had to like put together an amalgamation of stuff that made amalgamation of clothing that kind of made you look like a clown just to get the best stats. Then later they added a transmog ability where you could create an outfit and then, so you could have your character look the way you wanted, but then still put on the best gear. Now they're moving armor entirely to Cyberware for the most part, so we can just kind of create our own outfits and not really worry about different clothing as much. I'll have to kind of play around with that and see how that change actually affects the gameplay. Because I had a build that I did that was mostly like a tech and body character, or a tech and reflexes character, and I don't think I messed around with Cyberware too much on that playthrough, so I will have to check out how this change in particular will affect that build. The number of Cyberware implants your body can handle is now determined by your Cyberware capacity. Cyberware implants are now attuned to specific attributes. The higher the attribute, the stronger the stat bonus. You can now upgrade Cyberware on the Ripper Dock screen. Some Cyberware slots can be unlocked by acquiring specific perks. Added multiple new kinds of Cyberware. Visiting Ripper Docks is now more immersive. When getting Cyberware installed, you sit on an operating chair and experience different animations depending on the type of implant. That's really cool. Really, the only time you would have that type of experience in the game is when you're visiting Victor for the first time. So it's kind of cool that they're adding that in now. Added a side quest introducing the new Cyberware system for players who load on an older save. Okay, cool. I will definitely have to check that out on my tech and reflexes build and let you guys know how that goes. Got some changes to weapons here as well. Change the unique effect of some iconic weapons to better reflect their distinctive features. The first equip animation can now be triggered at any time. Hold B or double tap Alt while the weapon is holstered. Added smoke grenades. So that'd be interesting for maybe like more of a stealth build. Added new melee weapon finishers. I think we saw some of these in the trailer, so it'd be kind of interesting. I haven't done very much melee combat in Cyberpunk because melee combat feels awful in this game. So that's one thing I really want to test out more now that there's more like melee weapons, and it seems like building a melee character is a little bit more viable. You can now find a thermal katana in the game. That sounds really cool. I think we've seen this in the trailers as well, so I'm definitely going to be looking for that. Added new weapon mods and reworked some existing ones. Once installed in a weapon, mods are irreplaceable. All obsolete weapon mods will be removed from the game. In their place, you will find new, random weapon mods in your backpack. The quality of any mods added this way depends on your level. Remove the silent shot from revolvers. Remove the scope slot from light machine guns. That kind of makes sense. It's kind of ridiculous to put a scope on an LMG. That's a little bit overpowered. Implemented a new way to craft weapon mods. To craft a mod, you must first have 2 mods of lower quality. Let's see. Expanded the stash wall in V's apartment to display all of the iconic weapons from the base game. That's really cool. That was one of the things that was very confusing to me when playing through the game the first time. You have all of these like stash slots on the wall to display weapons, but there's like only specific weapons that you can put in those slots, and a lot of them you don't find until way, way later in the game. So it would be kind of cool to put things like, Yorinobu's gun and things like that in the stash. So that's kind of cool as well. We've also got some changes to vehicles. NPC vehicles can now switch lanes to avoid obstacles. This is good. The traffic AI has never been very good in Cyberpunk. It's been improved since launch, but still, you could literally just park your car in front of another car and they would never try to drive around you for the most part. So this is a good change. Pedestrians will now try to avoid running into moving vehicles. NPC drivers are now better at avoiding you when you are on foot. Improved braking, acceleration, and suspension of cars in traffic. Some NPCs now might react aggressively when you hijack their vehicle. So that's more of a GTA thing. Yeah, that is funny. I mean, you could always just I play Cyberpunk like GTA when I'm doing a body build because you can literally just walk up and like steal somebody's car and then just drive it. Sometimes it's more fun to do that than to like call one of your own vehicles. Various improvements to traffic density depending on time of day and night, resulting in more realistic traffic behavior. Driving with a quest-related NPC in your vehicle no longer disables traffic in the occupied lane, resulting in the feeling of a busier city. So again, making some more changes for immersion. Fixers will no longer text you about vehicles up for sale. You now purchase vehicles via the Auto Fixer net page on V's computer. Thank God! Oh my God, that was one of the most annoying things. It was so convoluted trying to find vehicles in this game. Like, you would get a text from a fixer, it would give you a quest, but the quest page didn't have a photo of the car, so you'd have to like go back into your text and try to remember what fixer gave you the car job, and then, oh my God, it was such a mess from just a quality of life standpoint. So now, finally, you can just go to a web page and buy the freaking car and see what you're buying. Like, that's such a good change. To find these, enable the new Auto Fixer filter on the world map. Vehicles are sorted by manufacturer. The vehicles equipped with built-in weaponry have photos marked with a special icon. As you earn more street cred, you will unlock more vehicles for purchase. There's also been a lot of changes to the balance and economy of the game. So for NPCs, all NPCs now scale to your level. Enemy difficulty is no longer dependent on what area of Night City you're in. That's cool. I think that's a good change. You know, it was kind of ridiculous to just go from like Watson and then go downtown, and it's like, oh, the gang downtown is like so much more powerful than the gang of Watson just for the reason that they're located on a different part of the map. Like, that never made much sense. So I think that's a good change. Enemies will have different tiers depending on the faction they belong to. Some NPT archetypes will feature low, medium, or high armor. All resistances for regular NPCs have been removed. Rebalance game difficulty to increase the challenge at higher difficulties. Let's see, weapons. Weapons now scale damage based on their tier. The damage for smart weapons has been lowered, but they now benefit from dedicated perks. I didn't use a ton of smart weapons in my playthrough. I used like the Skippy gun a few times, maybe a few other random smart weapons, but I didn't really engage with these a whole lot. I've used more like tech weapons and those sorts of things, and like handguns more in this game. And of course, like quick hacking, because I like the Netrunner builds. Loot now scales to your level. Removed excessive findable loot in the game, such as loot that distracts from scenes and quest locations. That's good. This is something I want to see in more RPGs. Like, don't get me wrong, I love looting in RPGs, but there's so many games that just put a ton of random, useless items for, like, you know, immersion or believability, but seeing all the loot icons and stuff everywhere in this game was always something that like kind of removed you from immersion. So I'm glad they're doing that. There's also been some quest bug fixes. I think this is the majority of it though. So I'm definitely excited to dive into this patch and kind of play around with it a little bit. I'm very interested in trying out the new builds and abilities. So I'll probably be doing some more videos as we get closer to Phantom Liberty's launch, which is only like a week away at this point. After I've had a chance to play around with this patch. So again, this is a free update on PC, Xbox Series X, and PlayStation 5 if you already have the game. So if you want to try this out for yourself, if you already got Cyberpunk, you can download it and play it right now. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to Big Dan Gaming for more Cyberpunk and RPG videos. Big shout out to all the channel members for supporting my content. Until next time, this has been Big Dan. I should go.